Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin my presentation. My presentation today will be focused on exploring students' behavior through learning analytic. But before I begin my presentation, I would like to remind you all, but please keep in mind the technology will not replace the instructor role, but the technology will help the learner or the student to enhance the weakness of the class, face-to-face learning mode. Okay. Okay, this is the overview of my presentation today. I'm starting from the big data era. Then the framework about how to design a learning analytic, theory and practice, and predictive modeling in teaching and learning, and student interaction in online learning environment, and other related works related to learning analytic. Okay, next. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Big data era. Big data is the most hyped term recently, and the arrival of big data era indicates the new trend of development of information technology. It's difficult to define the specific definition of big data, but it's similar to a large amount of data and massive amount of data which consists of structured and unstructured data that it's difficult to analyze and process with traditional database technique or other software technique. And it also make information explosion. It's because the development of mobile technology and ubiquitous technology, it enables us to make a data, and people reveal personal information consciously and unconsciously and willingly or unwillingly as they perform their activity or their daily life. So everybody can generate data in a second. We can imagine that how many data can exist, and it makes the information explosion. So we can imagine that the big data, you can see the picture, in this picture, we just see in the surface only this part, but actually this, beyond this, we can find that there is a big data. We have to, data mining to proceed it, and we have to proceed it and produce information that we can make more important or more to foster in learning. Okay, I'm going to focus on the implementation of big data in learning. Actually, we are developing massive online open course, and this is one of the part of our project, Learning Analytic. And Learning Analytic has been a hot topic, but it's not genuine research field. It relates to the intersection of numerous academic fields, and also it synthesizes some existing technique, for example, machine learning, artificial intelligence, statistics, and information retrieval and visualization. So the learning analytic is highly complex information and deal with the professional storage and management, and it's combined two trends actually. It's a learning environment and expansion of data mining technique. Okay, the learning analytics gather large amount of data to process, collect, measure, and it can generate the student behavior, and it will be used to enhance the learning process. And finally, it will increase the learning outcomes of the student. Okay, this is the prominent part in designing learning analytic. This is a triad depiction of the element of learning analytic theory and practice. We can see this is the epistemology, assessment, and pedagogy. Why this is important in designing learning analytic? Because epistemology assumption can fundamentally affect and fundamentally intervenes the assessment and pedagogy. That's why we have to focus on this triad depiction. You can see the epistemology is someone who knows something, or how someone learn, and how do we know something. And the pedagogy is how to impart the knowledge to the student. And the assessment is the measuring something. A good grade doesn't, which doesn't reflect the mastery. Okay, the epistemology can be seen as a driving force to assessment, that uncovering student weakness. For example, in traditional classroom, we cannot mapping the weakness of student only through assessment. It's impossible to, David say, like the previous in the assessment, that some assessment cannot reflect the mastery level of the student knowledge. So that, therefore, the learning analytic will mapping the student knowledge, and then give gain more important information to the instructor. So it can reflect the strategy that will deliver to the student. Okay, the epistemology here, there are two questions posed here. What are we measuring and how we are measuring? So these questions are going to define what kind of learning analytic, what variable will be embedded or will be measured during the learning process in the learning environment, online learning environment. Okay, in the learning analytic theory and practice, in the pedagogy perspective, there are also two questions posed here. What is the knowledge important? And what is the analytic for? And for the first question of the pedagogy, development of analytic approach learning context involves making decision about what knowledge will and will not be focused on. So this is how the learning strategy will be chosen in order to impart the knowledge to the student. And also for the analytic, who is the analytic for? In the development of analytic devices, we should consider target of devices is. In educational setting, our target is instructor, students, or other stakeholders. Administrators is also included in the target of the learning analytic for. Okay, the assessment also is one of the key process in designing learning analytic. This is two questions posed here. Where does the assessment happen? And when does the assessment and feedback occur? We have to answer this question, and then we can identify the learning analytic variable that will be equipped in our online learning system devices. Okay, talking about learning analytic, we have it's very closely related to interaction in e-learning, because we are going to record the behavior of students. Like Professor Yutaka Urakawa presentation before, he said that we can capture the data through another tools, for example, eye tracking. This is, the eye tracking is embedded, for example, some of the example eye tracking or another sensor is embedded to the browser, and then we can analyze the movement of the student. And we can see here the level of interaction. This is the primary level of interaction in online learning environment. But actually, this level imitate the interaction in traditional classroom. This is learner self-interaction, where self-regulated learning is entirely out there, and then the individual can monitor their learning, and then they should make planning to their learning as well. And the second level is learner-human interaction and learner-non-human interaction. This section, in this level, this is behavioristic level. In the level 2, this is also influence the first level, learner self-interaction. So we have to define the interaction, what interaction will be used in our online learning system or other digital system. For example, learner to instructor or learner to learner. Maybe learner to learner is related to collaboration or asynchronous or synchronous collaboration, such as forum, group discussion. And learners to others. Learners to others is related to others' devices or other hyperlink in the system that connect to outside the learning environment. And the other side is the learner to non-human interaction. Learner to content interaction. This is how the student access the content, the frequency of the access the content, and how long. And there are many kind of activities that we can develop it from one of the part of the learner to non-human interaction. And then learner to interface, since the interface is the mastery main or the main of the online learning environment. This is the student interact to the like a portal to interact to the system. So this is the main system, the learner to interface interaction. Then the learner to environment. It's related to the interaction with the outside of the computer during the learning process. So this is the interaction outside of the online learning environment. For example, they use another tool to finish the homework, or using another tool to fix homework or another task. The third level is learner to instruction interaction. This third level also behavioristic level, and this level will, the third level will organize, the third level will organize the second level, actually, because this is the learning strategy that will be provided in the learning environment. So by knowing this level of interaction in e-learning, we can develop a good learning analytic, because without knowing this level of interaction, we cannot mapping what is the activity of the students and what will they doing in during the learning process in the online learning environment. And talking about learning interaction, it's related to the student engagement. The student engagement, some researchers say that after reviewing several online learning activities and found a number of login or frequency of login and how they accessing the content, it found that mostly online learning course serve a passive learning, because the student only access the material. There is no activity that the student can construct the knowledge. So in order to address this problem, the passive learning in online learning activity should be enhanced with learning motivation and learning analytic. So it will increase the student engagement. As we know that engagement is cognitive process in learning tasks and indicator to active participant, emotion and other aspect in learning. And also learning motivation is psychological variable that significantly impacts learning behavior, engagement, effort, and learning achievement. As we know that learning motivation is divided into intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. We can use these two types of motivation to enhance our learning analytic design. The student engagement consists of three parts, actually. In the traditional classroom, we always say that the student engagement of our student is increased, but we have to underline that the student engagement itself is divided in three parts: behavioral engagement, emotional engagement, and cognitive engagement. And the behavioral engagement itself is related to the physical existence of the student, how they react to the teaching material, and the feedback of the student itself, the physical existence. And then the emotional engagement is the emotion that emerges relating to the it reflects to the learning material that student learn. For example, that the student understand, or the student get angry or get boring about the content of delivering content. And the other is cognitive engagement. Cognitive engagement is a cognitive process where the student can construct metacognitive process. And then here we have to embed it another strategy. For example, we have to use a generative learning strategy in order to promote this cognitive engagement. For example, we use mind mapping or another technique to promote this cognitive engagement. Okay, this is one of the example our project about the learning analytic, and actually this is under developing under Center of Excellence Disruptive Learning Innovation. Actually, we also use artificial intelligence to enhance the learning process. Okay, predictive modeling in teaching learning. Before I start this slide, I'm going to narrate a small story about predictive analytic. Until 2012, predictive analytic was not widely known as right now, until a father of a daughter wrote a small story about his experience to the New York Times, and he told about the daughter. The daughter had received a coupon for maternity clothing and baby product from the grocery store. It turned out that the grocery store know before anyone else, know that can predict that the daughter is pregnant before anyone else, before her father, before herself. Why this is happened? It's happened because the grocery store collect 25 unique of purchase history of the daughter, and then make analysis, and then make a prediction of pregnancy expectant. So since then, the predictive analytic become realistic to the society, and it begin to implementing in real world that the predictive modeling is very, very important to attack the specific target of the buyer, the customer. So it can reduce the cost of advertising as well. So this is the very popular technique in big data era. In predictive modeling in teaching and learning, we can define predictive analytic are group of technique used to make inference about uncertain future events. And also in educational domain, it's a measurement of learning. It can predict that one of the tool or strategy that will be impact in the future for the learning outcome. This is my research, and you can find in this conference proceeding. I just explain at glance. Predicting student learning outcome using learning analytic data in generative activity based online learning environment. In Moodle, e-learning that use a platform like a Moodle. Normally, we use we can get a usual learning analytic data. It can generate a passive learning activity if we do not modify the strategy. So in order to enhance the learning activity, in my research, I adding a generative activity, for example, mind mapping. Through mind mapping, the learning construct the knowledge. And in this system, I utilize mind mapping to as a formative assessment. And then the results show that through learning, through generative activities such as mind mapping can predict that the learning outcome give a better performance than other activities. Okay, this is another related work. Maybe you can find or you can access the slide and to read further about the paper that relating the predictive analytic and learning analytic in teaching and learning. I think that's all. Thank you very much.